We're going to start a example program here, so we're clicked on CNC12, waiting for the software to fully load. If you notice the dashes, that indicates the machine has not been zeroed. Typically you're only zeroing the machine once a day in the morning, or if you have to repower the machine. So we're going to reset, and the first thing we're going to do is jog the axis to a position that is close to home. So we're going to move the X minus, and then we're going to bring it forward. On this machine, machine 0 is in the front left corner. Most of my machines are in the left rear corner. So now we're going to press cycle start. It's going to jog the Z axis to its home switch. Z is home. Now it's going to drive the X axis to the left until it hits its X minus home switch. And now it's going to pair the axes and drive it and home out and square the Y axis. Because I'm squaring, it's actually using two individual homing switches on both sides of the Y. Now it's driving it back to the square, and the home is successful. And the first thing that's going to pop up number-wise is your work coordinates from your last session. So that's where you told it your work piece was, the home position the last time. If you hit Alt-D, you're going to see the true machine 0, and that's from what we just zeroed. So Alt-D again to go back to our work coordinates. Now we're going to jog the torch over to the left front corner, that small piece of metal in the center of the table. And I typically use the left front corner for the 0 on all my cuts. You can use the center of the plate. You can use any of the corners, any of the 4 corners. But typically in machining, you use the left front corner, so I apply the same on plasma. I'm going to jog that forward just a little bit more to show you what happens if you're not sitting in between two slats. The metal is going to flex when you drive the Z down, and that's going to improperly sense the height of the metal because it'll spring back up when the Z rises. So you want to make sure you jog to a position where you're not over the top of the slat. You're in between two slats when you set your XY0 for your work coordinate G54. So you want that torch tip slightly ahead of the slat, away from you. Okay, next we're going to load a file. And we're going to use the Centroid test hook. Make sure you use a .tap file extension, or .ncc or .txt. So you can confirm up the top that that's been loaded. If you want to graphically see it, hit F8 and it'll show you a picture of it. We're not going to right now. Next, we're going to set the profile for the steel or the material we're using. We're using steel at 45 amps and it's 0.0625 thickness. So we're going to choose that profile to cut. And these are default book settings for hypertherm. I'm going to slow it up slightly. They say the feed rate's 350. I'm going to change it to 300. I find across the board those speeds are just a tad on the high side. So I try to lower it about 10% or 12%. We got automatic for the torch height control, and we're going to save that. That'll close, and first we're going to do a dry run. So we're going to highlight and turn on dry run, and that's just going to show you where it's going to cut. It's a good way to make sure that your part's going to fit within the piece of metal that you have. Saves a lot of wasted metal if you got, especially if you got a larger part and you're just not absolutely sure of the size. So that looks good for our dry run. So we're going to toggle that off, and we're going to actually cut it. So we're going to press cycle start. It did the pierce. It's cutting the second hole. You gotta remember it's cutting at 300 inches per minute, so it's cutting pretty darn fast. And it's done. We'll let that piece of metal cool off for a second. We're going to jog the Y forward to get the torch out of the water so it quits blowing water everywhere. So we're just jogging it over the top of the solid piece of steel. And we're going to reach in there and grab that piece of steel now, our test hook. Hold it up to the camera. Looks pretty good. There's no slag on the bottom. So that's the end of this first video. And we're going to shut down and exit CNC12.